All right, we're live. This is MC1 Gamer. After a little bit of a hiatus, we are back, and we have another unlocking. I have with me Tom Lyons, and we're going to be talking about Daughters of Khaine. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends. How's it going?
So, as many people have commented to me and sent messages out, it's been a little bit of a time frame since I did one of these. There's a number of reasons. I'll go over real quickly. It's been scheduling issues. I've tried to get Tom on a couple of times to talk about a couple of the releases that have happened since the beginning of the new year, and a couple other people as well. And it just hasn't been able to. It's been a little tough since the holidays. I know it's March, but we got to kick this thing up and get it in gear, and that's why we're here. And I was happy to get Tom on. He was able to come and do this tonight. And Daughters of Khaine. Tell me about it, Tom. I mean, this has got to be something you're very interested in. And by the way, I may not have been putting out content, but I have been lurking. I've been watching all of your shows on Warhammer Weekly. I've been watching a lot of other people's shows too. I know you did 2 shows on Daughters of Khaine, so I want to not really retread some of the stuff that you guys already extensively went into. But for those who may not, for the 1 or 2 people who may watch my show and not yours, give us a synopsis about what are Daughters of Khaine like, and how do they play, because they seem pretty cool.
Yeah. Let me just open and say, obviously, as you mentioned, we did 2 weeks on Warhammer Weekly, and we robustly went over every war scroll and all of the allegiance rules and temples and all that stuff in the first week. The second week, we focused all on synergies, so all the battalions and everything, all the interplay of abilities. But I didn't give away everything on those shows, so I saved a little bit for our time together. There's one particular combo. When I shared it with Vince, he's like, "Holy shit!" So, cool. Where some people have been talking about a Marathi bomb, and they were doing it a way that they thought they were all cheeky, teleporting her in, then transforming her and all that. Bullshit. I'm going to drop some knowledge bomb on how to really charge with Marathi. But all that to say, we've done multiple hours of this elsewhere. I'm sure Mitch will put those in the comments below.
I will. As you said, yep. I don't want to go over and maybe we'll have some crossover on some stuff.
Indeed.
But I encourage anybody watching this who really wants to go and get deep into Daughters of Khaine. Watch this show. Certainly, if you're here, you're probably doing that already. But go and watch Warhammer Weekly. I will put the links in the doobly-doo.
Yeah. So that given all of that, then let me go on and say, we so Daughters of Khaine are a build out of the Daughters of Khaine are the build out of the kind of the sub faction of the same name. They're kind of the children of witch elves and the Khaine cult as we knew it back in prior editions. If you ever played Dark Age, or not Dark Age, if you ever played Warhammer Online,
yes, I have.
Under the Dark Elf faction, it's a nice merger of the witch elves and the disciples of Khaine. It's a nice mishmash of those two things. And that's functionally what this whole faction is. And so it's a bunch of very scantily clad women with sharp knives and murderous intent.
I have a little bit of knowledge of that in recent history.
Indeed. And basically in the lore, what's happened is that Marathi, who escaped Slaanesh, but not untouched by Slaanesh. And so Marathi escaped, but she was twisted and warped. And she made it out, and when the elves began reforging elven souls, she took her portion and forged some in her name, or forged some in the name of Khaine. She actually recovered the heart of Khaine, which is it's heart, apparently Khaine's heart. And she, all the people pray to it, she siphons power off of it. And so she actually is doing all this in the name of Khaine, but not really. Anyways, but in her remaking, in addition to the Khaine followers themselves, which are your witch elves and your hag queens and all that stuff, she also reforged a bunch of elves with bat wings and with snake torsos, Medusa-esque, and so which all do kind of her own deformation, because she has a big long snake tail and big bat wings. And so they, Doal and Ulgu, and like, even though like the faction has largely been around up until this point, they've been in hiding, and so they've been hiding kind of their true forms and their true intent. But now with the malign portents, they're out for Murderous Blood. So that's, you know, kind of that's the heart of the story. As a faction, as a new release, there's a number of new kits. You know, there's the old stuff like you got your Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughter in a box. They're fairly expensive inventory. I just got done building 60 of them, and they're beautiful. I love the sculpts. The
how hard are they to build? Because I know there's some kits that are a chore to build.
They're not a chore to build.
Yeah.
If anything, it hurts. It hurts to build them.
What do you mean it hurts?
Because
are they stabbing you even as you're putting these things together?
They are, in fact. Yeah, it's a very painful army to build. We used to joke around when we played Warhammer Online, because when you walk into the Dark Elf camps, like even their tents had spikes on them. Like everything had spikes. And in fact, like that's what it's like to build Witch Elves. Like it's just this painful, like my fingers were like numb from pain from building these girls, because all their daggers and their shoulder pads and their head dresses and everything is sharp, which is awesome for details. Like they're not really nice sculpts, really nice models. But it's a painful. I mean, it's a good pain.
Well,
it's
what
a
about
pain.
Are they sturdy enough in these pieces that they don't easily break? I know that I remember when I put together the wood, not the wood elves, the Sylvaneth. Sometimes those spindly bits would break off and they were an issue. But
there are some bits that like I cause like stress, like not fractures, but like stress. Stuff in them, but largely like they were a delight to build. I really enjoyed it. The women are in super dynamic poses, and they're just like, they just look awesome.
All right, well, great. I can't wait to see them, because you know I've seen a lot of. If anybody has not seen some of Tom's work, he does some very nice painting, and from the incredible KO conversions that you've done, which is a combination of Dispossessed to just in general, the competitive stuff that you've put together and shown pictures of has been very impressive. So I really look forward to seeing these. And I know that there's a special love in your heart for any of the elves, because you've been waiting so long to see
Indeed. Them. And in fact, so here the irony for me is that after the KO nerf dropped with the last GHB, there was a season of about a week where I thought about scrapping my entire KO Fireslayer project. Like all of it.
Really?
And what I had decided on was I was going to do a 3 cauldron. I was going to do a 3 cauldron Daughters of Khaine force with 90 Witch Elves and just the whole deal with overlapping stacking ward saves and stuff like that.
We talked about that, but there was some discrepancy in terms of one of the
rules. And so what ended up happening was, because it was unclear in the rules, I didn't want to show up to a tournament under the impression that I could do it, and then them to rule that I couldn't. And so because it was unclear in the rules, and I knew it was going to potentially get clarified, I decided not to. The irony is that list, by the way, showed up in the Masters. So in the UK Masters, of the 12 lists, that Witch Elf list I was going to build showed up. But that said, like I have the stuff to build 4 cauldrons, and I have 80 Witch Elves all on my shelf. Like, so I was ready to get, like, so this dropped, and I'm like, okay, time to start building. Like, you know, so
what people may not know, and I'm sure that a lot of them do, is that you probably have just about everything sitting on that shelf somewhere, and you can be ready to go.
Like Vince has made a way bigger deal out of what's on my shelf. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's bad.
I've seen your videos with your inventory. You know,
yeah, but I've sold a lot of that. Like I've sold all my wood elf stuff.
I've gotten rid of a lot of extraneous stuff too. So I do have
a lot. Don't get me wrong. I do have a lot. It's just it's not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. That's what I
you say that where like your entire head is covering just one section of your background. And it's all boxes.
Rotate this way.
There you go.
Anyways, but what I would say is that but you see the gaps? Like there's gaps up in that corner now.
I know you have places that you can fill there.
There's gaps here because all that was my Dark Elf, Daughters of Khaine stuff. Anyways,
people turning in for the list, man.
No, I was already wanting to do this. Like that's my point. Is that I was already planning on doing Daughters of Khaine. So when this dropped, I was like, okay, it's just an excuse to actually build what I own. And so I'm gonna build and paint some of this stuff, and then And then we're going to Vince and I are going to run it as a teams for Holy Havoc in November.
So you're both going to be running.
We're both going to run Daughters.
Nice. Are you guys doing this? Are you synergizing with the color scheme, or are you going to do?
No, we're going to do unique color schemes. We're going to be from different temples, so it just makes sense that we're different color schemes.
Cool.
We'll do similar basing but different color schemes. That said, Vince loves the snakes, and as we cover these lists coming up, you're going to learn that I hate the snakes. They're not bad. It's just they're not doing what I want to do. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's a competitive list out there of snakes.
You guys went over it in your. That's not one of the lists that you put in the one that you guys talked about that Vince had suggested.
Yeah, I mean, Vince wants to do like a temple nest, slaughter troop combination, and that's what he's probably going to do at some point. So even though like Vince and I are doing both Daughters of Khaine, he's doing almost all snakes with some auxiliary support. I'm doing all witches and Sisters of Slaughter with auxiliary support. So like visually, our armies will look like two distinct armies, even though they're from the same faction.
Got it. Well, it's cool. You'll probably get a lot of the various options in the battle tome covered on the table, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Even though, I mean, Vince's options are going to be terrible because, anyways.
But they will be well painted, though.
They will be well painted. No, it'll be good. What I would say is that, yeah, so there are lots of options. But as I mentioned, I'm not real focused on a lot of that stuff.
Well, let's move along and just we can get to the list. But before we actually do get to the list, because that's always the juiciest part of these shows, I want to get your take on not only how they play. I want to save everything that's competitive in terms of what you feel, how they stack up in the meta. Let's save that for the end. Okay.
Okay.
But let's talk. I want to talk about how they play, because the impression that a lot of people have gotten previous to this book, just knowing what they know about the Age of Sigmar version of the Dark Elves, is that this is an army that first of all, if it's witch elves and the the cauldron and whatnot, it's going to be very melee heavy. It's going to be close combat heavy, not a whole lot of shooting. And there's some adjustments to that because of new units, but there's going to be some misperceptions in terms of what people knew about how Dark Elves played before, and maybe how this Daughters of Khaine iteration is going to be look on the table, how it's going to feel on the table. So that's one aspect. The other thing is how do you feel about the battle tome itself in comparison to some recent ones? Because we haven't gotten a chance. We were trying to get together for Nurgle. We couldn't schedule it. I wanted to do one on Nagash. I had some other people that I was going to do that with, but that's eventually I'm gonna pull some lists together. I know that's already dated, but hey, I'm a Death player. See,
yep. I think he's representing up in the corner.
Yes, he is. Not too far away from Marcus. So another death iteration in a different game, of course. But the bottom line is that I'm really impressed with where these tomes are going with these releases. But they're going to have different feelings. They're going to have in terms of how they play, how well they might fit into the meta. Again, we'll get to that later. What's your impression beyond just describing how they play about this book in general? Do you think they did a good job? Do you think they missed some opportunities? Do you think they hit some things just out of the park? Go.
Yeah, I think what's happened is that I think GW has really refined its process of playtesting. And I can see that even in a variety of different ways. They fixed the mistake of KO. So the key with KO was this. KO was a bunch of different skyports, like 8, that you could choose from. And each had their own special rule set and stuff like that. But the play style of the army was identical. From a competitive standpoint. It was in some sense a gun line, whether it was a mobile gun, whether it was a gun line that was drop and shoot, or whether it was stand back and shoot. It's all just shooting. There's no melee options. There's no mix. The diversity, what the ranged units almost universally offer is shoot with neg 1 rend and shoot with neg 2 rend. Like that's like multiple shots, low shots, and then there's a couple of melee attacks from engine riggers. Like that's all of KO. And what ended up happening was there are a bunch of different skyports, but there's basically one, maybe two, possibly 2.5 viable skyports for that playstyle. So there are other playstyles in the skyports, but there's no units to support that playstyle. You know, like their named general has like a run and charge ability. Who is running and charging in that army? Like Engine Rigger's going to grapple up to 3 inches and then just do a 3-inch charge. There's no running going on there.
Yeah. We're going to see plenty of that in this one, though.
Right, exactly, and that's the point. And so there was a mismatch between skyports and actual what was on the table. Here, but in these recent books, what we've seen is that there's a much, like, there's intentional design, and they're moving towards multiple armies in a single book. And what I mean by that is this. Like, Nurgle didn't do it as much, but you definitely, it was on wide open display with both Legions of Nagash and with Sisters, because there are multiple army builds within those. In the book that we're looking at, Daughters of Khaine, you have 4 different temples. Is it 4 or 5? It's 4, right? I'm not losing my mind. Kraith, Hag Nar, yeah. So let me just run through those because we're going to need to talk about them at some point anyways. So we have Hag Nar, which is kind of the stereotypical, that's like that's Marathi's, what she initially founded. There's Draqueen, Kraith, and Kelebron. So 4. I'm right. Mm-hmm. And each of these, we're going to have a very different play style. And each of these buff the actual battalions very differently. And so the synergies that they actually build are significant. Okay.
If you had to describe those 4 in like just like a sentence or two and how they play.
Yeah.
That's different. Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah, so Hag Nar is going to be focused on one or multiple cauldrons, probably heavy witches, and it's going to be more defensive. And so what the main trait of it does is buffs your ward save. An army-wide 6-up goes to an army-wide 5-up within 7 inches of the general, which is really significant because you can get re-rolls of that roll off of one of the prayers. So it goes to a 5-up re-rollable ward save, which we've never seen re-rollable ward saves. So that's mathematically, that is equivalent of a 5+5+. That's what it is. Like a 5+5+ ward save, which is stacking Nurgle ward saves. Like, you know how I feel about that. Yeah. Those multi-ward saves are pretty good. And the other thing that they're doing is, so the other thing that they do is they're going to be really deadly in melee combat from round 3 on. Or in combat in general from round 3 on. Because the whole army, they have like a scaling buff system. Every round they get a new set of buffs. So it's kind of like Fire Slayers, where there's like 6 different buffs or 5 different buffs. Okay, Fire Slayers are choosing which one they want to trigger each turn. Imagine if with Daughters, they get a set 1 turn 1, and then turn 2 they get the turn 1 and turn 2. Turn 3 they get turn 1, 2, and 3. Turn 4 they get 1, 2, 3, and 4, and yada yada. Anyways, and then starting turn 3, everybody in the army re-rolls 1s to hit. For Hag Nar, they re-roll all failed hits starting in turn 3, just universally. Yeah. So
you got to hit them hard and early, otherwise they are by the end of the game.
Right, and they have a ward save. They have a better ward save, so hitting them hard and early may not do a whole lot. So it's one of my favorites. It's what appealed to me when I first looked at it. Draqueen is a speed kills army, and what I mean by that is their main ability. Like their War Scroll Battalion is buffing the Slaughter Troop, which is heavy on like Sisters of Slaughter. Their Sisters of Slaughter, their new ability is to pile in from 6 inches out, so they can like Slaanesh, you can just opt to activate those units, without charging and just pile in combat if they have an enemy within 6 inches, which is bonkers good. So they're going to be moving around the table. The actual Slaughter Troop, we'll talk about it because it's in some of the lists that I've built. Allows you to retreat and shoot, or retreat and charge for anybody in the battalion. And so what Draqueen does, this is all doing that, and this gives a universal. Anytime you charge, you get +1 in the combat phase for that same turn to hit, +1 to hit. So like everybody that can retreat and recharge can get +1 to hit. So every turn, everyone will retreat out of combat and recharge into combat every turn for additional +1 and to reposition their army. You got to remember they're going to be running. They're like the base movement on these girls is really good. Let me say that. The base movement on the witches is 6 plus a d6 reroll ones. Because they're running, because the other thing they can do is they can run and charge because of their hornblower.
I envision like this is a thing that's been a trend is like the Age of Sigmar movement trays. People trying to find ones that are that are manipulatable, or even if they're static. You get them for the first turn or two, and then you discard them once you wind up getting into close combat.
Yep.
But this is an army that I think is going to throw that completely out the window with the idea that you're going to be constantly repositioning. Once you get stuck in, it doesn't mean that's where you are. You're not going to be static.
No,
you might be repositioning entire units.
These girls are going to pick their fights because even if they find themselves in a bad combat, they're going to retreat out and put whatever they want into that space, and they're going to get bonuses to do that. This is going to be a super hard army to pin down. And it's actually my favorite list. Like of the list I've built, the Draqueen is actually it's the one I hated. I hated them as a temple when I initially looked at them because it just wasn't like I'm not a speed kills style player. But man, when I saw what I could do with this tactically, I was like, whoo. Yeah.
I'm just curious as to because I know there's a lot of people who like practice their quick play for tournament style, and this is going to be one that's going to give people fits.
You have to practice with a list like this, and if you don't, you will not get through your games. Period. Yeah,
that's because there's a lot more movement. There's more movement in this in this army because it's also a lot of bodies than there is in in historically with the big skeleton list where everybody was like, oh, that's just bullshit. It's going to take forever. I'll get through 3 turns. This is going to be you definitely got to.
Well, not only that, like these are high defenses, so re-rolling multiple re-rolls.
Right, you're going to have a lot of
dice. You're going to have a lot of rolling for defenses. And for offense, like each block of witch elves, if they're double knives, are going to have 120 attacks. So, and you could have up to 4 of those blocks in an army really easily. Like that.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's Draqueen. Kraith. They're going to be more of kind of a catch-all. They're my favorite generic. Like if I want to do a battalion or I want to do a temple, but I don't want anything to be dictated, like anything significant, Kraith is my way to go. Because Kraith, they require one of your heroes to have a certain artifact, so that's the penalty. But they allow your Cauldron Guard to add any number of additional Hag Queens or Slaughter Queens. So like Cauldron Guard is one of my favorite battalions, and so this is kind of a very straightforward thing. Their main ability is like in combat, after combat phase, once you've piled in, you roll a d6 for your unit. If you roll 6, you get to pile in and attack again. Every unit. So every unit has a chance to pile in and go back in.
That's terrible.
So like every unit has a chance to Van Hell's dance. All of them. In every combat.
Like, and I can only cast it with my death on 1 unit.
But you get it automatic. This is everybody has a chance to do it. And then finally, Kelebron. This is going to be another popular one. They have a command trait that's required of their generals, so they don't get a lot of the toys. That's one of the penalties. That's one of the when I talked about GW doing well, they've really balanced these temples because like there's a cost to choosing a lot of these. Either your first artifact is dictated, or your command trait is dictated, or oftentimes there's a very real cost to choosing these. Kelebron, a lot of people like the temple because it gives you the trait, lets you choose a unit at the start of your hero phase, a unit within 7 inches of your general, and you can pick them up and reset them down like the Seraphon teleport. The difference is that if the unit that you're selecting has enemy models within 3 inches, if they're in combat, they can't be teleported. So it's not as good as the Seraphon.
You can shut it down then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can shut it down, and also like when you replace, you also can't be within 9 inches of enemy model. So like Kelebron is good, but it's limited. So like it is of best use at the top of 1. Like if you're doing it before they've moved out of their starter zone, because you can grab and set stuff exactly where you need them at the beginning of the game. And then their other main ability is they subtract 1 from hit rolls to when they're targeted in the shooting phase. So like which is really good against stuff like KO and stuff like that.
So certain armies, it could be very good.
Yeah, and I would say that 3 of the 4 lists here will probably see heavy tournament play.
Okay, let's go. Let's get to it.
So, yep.
Let's go take a look. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Yep. The other interesting thing that I wanted to just add when we're talking about balance and design, GW has multiple artifact tables based on the keywords. So like base heroes, there's a generic table, and there's like a wizard table and a priest table. There are wizards and priests in this army. There are 6 specialized spells and 6 specialized prayers. And so there's lots of customization, lots of toys and tools you get to play with, a lot like Nurgle. And the consequence of that is that you're almost never going to have everything. So you have to pick and choose what you want to have.
Yeah, I like that. I like having lots of options.
Yep.
Invariably, there are going to be certain lists that rise to the top that people see are more effective, certain combinations that people are going to see that are getting to the top tables or even winning. But I like the idea that there's a range of things that you can actually make your own unique list or just set yourself apart. And that's another interesting thing that I like seeing, since I think the first time I saw that was with one of the Stormcast books, the most recent one, I think, where there just was like pages on pages of options. And at the time, I have to admit, pretty jealous, but I was hoping that was a sign of things to come. But, then there was, gaps between some of these releases. Recently, we've had this like 1, 2, 3, and, and then hints of what's coming next. It's been more repetitious. So it's nice to see that they're all kind of starting to incorporate this really, deep level of potential customization just based on what, the whim of whoever's playing and what their style is. All right, I'm going to go share the screen and we're going to get to it.
So what let me know if we have 3 2K armies here. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to make very different feeling armies, even though none of these are actually snakes. Okay. So none of these are snake heavy lists. But these should all feel very different from what they're doing. And so I'll walk through them. And again, this is not to say that snakes are bad. I think snakes are okay. They're not my play style. They're not, in the events that I'm playing, oftentimes bodies are really important. For I'm thinking of the Holy Wars, Holy Havoc events. And so low model count armies are generally at a disadvantage. I like defense. So things like the Cauldron of Blood is a really good unit that broadcasts like a passive +1 armor, or +1 save. And so, a lot of the things that I like are in the Witch Elf stuff. And I like the aesthetics of the Witch Elves even more than the snakes. So that's why you're going to see...
It's a lot more interesting to look at than Nurgle, I have to admit.
Yeah, it is indeed. And I mean, what I'll say is this. Again, I'm not saying any of the snake lists are bad. I think that they're perfectly viable. Like I said, I think you can make a pretty low drop temple list. I think that... and I think that you could probably do a Sisters of Slaughter Temple Nest list as well. Like, I think that both of those could potentially be pretty viable in competitive play. Okay, so let's look at my first list. So this list is actually my favorite. We alluded to this list and kind of talked around this list on Warhammer Weekly. This is a 4-drop list, which is a little bit high from where I like, but just what you gain from that 4-drop is just too good. It's too good to pass up. And so let me walk through this. So it's a Draqueen. If you remember, Draqueen is the one that gets +1 to hit on charges. Mm-hmm. Draqueen is also required to have it. If you have a Slaughter Queen in your army, you're required to take the Dark Sword item, which moves the Slaughter Queen's like good sword attack from 2 attacks to 4 attack, or 3 attacks to 4 attacks. So it's just +1 attack with one of her swords. So it's a pretty meh item, but it's again, the cost I would say is worth it. The other big thing is that Draqueen makes the Slaughter Troop Battalion allow you to add 2 units of Witch Elves to the Slaughter Troop. Normally, the Slaughter Troop is a Slaughter Queen, 2 Sisters of Slaughter units, and 2 Heartrender units. And so that makes this a fairly low drop army, makes the Slaughter Troop army a fairly low drop. Slaughter Troop itself, I don't know if you have the war scrolls for these. The Slaughter Troop itself is... I do, but let's go through it. Yeah, let's just go through it, and I'll talk through it. So the Slaughter Troop Battalion itself, anything in the battalion can retreat and either recharge or retreat and shoot. Okay? This is the one that I was telling you about where they'll be able to get in combat and then retreat out and recharge and choose their combats. Okay.
Yep. This is going to be the Khaine Shuffle.
It's going to be the Khaine Shuffle. Exactly. So the general is a Slaughter Queen on Cauldron. The Slaughter Queen, the big perk of the Slaughter Queen is that she has the command ability, the only command ability other than Marathi's in the army, which allows you to pick a unit in combat nearby and let them pile in the hero phase, pile in and attack in the hero phase. So like you get that pile in and attack again in the hero phase from the general. So like once these girls get into combat, they just turn things to mist. So one of the big spells, it's a return of Mind Razor. Yep. Mind Razor by default adds -1 or increases Ren by 1. It's a 7 cast, so it's generally a kind of hard spell to get off, but there are ways to mitigate that. You'll see that in this list. But if you have a higher bravery though than the enemy, you also get +1 damage.
Nice.
And
wow, with all those attacks, geez.
Yeah, so there's a real value in getting over the enemy bravery. Okay. And how because the command trait in Draqueen is not dictated, you can take the generic trait Zealous Order. Zealous Order allows the general to broadcast their bravery in a 7-inch bubble. So the witch's normally bravery is 7, which is okay. 7 bravery is not bad. It's over a lot of common troops. But the Slaughter Queen on Cauldron has a bravery of 9, and she now broadcasts that over a radius of, I'm going to get the exact number, over a 14-inch radius. Sorry, not 7, 14 inches.
Okay, that's pretty good.
So she broadcasts out over a 14-inch. Now, as an aside, let me point out that the way the wording is on one of the abilities of the Cauldron of Blood that she's standing on, there's an idol on there. Daughters of Khaine is within 7 inches. Add +1 to their bravery characteristic. She is within 7 inches of herself, so her bravery characteristic goes to 10, and she broadcasts that.
I would love to see this in a combination, like a 2-player.
Yep.
With a bravery bomb Legions of Nagash list.
How amazing would that be?
Yes,
yeah, I agree.
That has to happen.
Yeah, I agree. It would be sexy. And so she broadcasts a 10 bravery. So basically, you're 1 point of bravery away from breaking the hardest of units. From getting double damage against basically everything in the game. Jeez. Yeah, it's pretty significant, is what I would say. So Zealous Order is what broadcasts that big bubble. She and the Slaughter Queen is equipped with Zealous Order. That Cauldron of Blood, by the way, all Cauldrons of Blood, whether a Slaughter Queen or a Hag Queen is on the Cauldron, broadcasts a blood shield. It starts at 18 inches, and as she takes wounds, it'll go down. It'll decrease in radius until it drops to 2 inches. So it gets much smaller. But this bubble adds a passive +1 to saving throws to friendly Daughters of Khaine units that are wholly within the range of the bubble. So that's real good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because most of the army has a 5 or a 6 up, and so this moves them to 4s and 5 ups. And then they get better than that, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. The Slaughter Queen can also unbind, which is significant. She has, because you're in faction, she has 2 prayers per round. She has some dumb, like, personal prayers that she can cast. And then
she only cast her. I forget if they had queens or
all of them have prayers.
Okay,
all of the queens have prayers,
but can they unbind?
No, only the Slaughter Queen unbinds.
Right. Okay, so there's some
limitation. The Slaughter Queen is the more fighty of the 2, by the way. And then so she has these prayers. She'll be oftentimes so there's a dormant statue of Khaine, or like an idol of Khaine on the back of the thing. One of the prayers will activate that, and it gives like the Cauldron of Blood like 4 attacks at a 3-up, -2 Ren 3 damage with a 2-inch ring.
I forget now. Does that thing come off, or is it part of? Is it stationary as part of the?
You can take it as a separate unit,
but in this list,
it stays on the Cauldron. Like it never moves off your Cauldron. Yeah. So it's just another set of attacks, a really kind of ball buster attacks that will
magnetize it.
What? Well, yeah. I mean, like I have enough kits that I'll be fine. But
I don't doubt.
You could potentially do that. And the other prayer that she's going to be throwing around is Sacrament of Blood. Sacrament of Blood's one of my favorite prayers. A lot of people, some people are going to use it, but I don't think it's going to get as much play in a lot of lists as others. Sacrament of Blood allows you to choose a Daughters of Khaine unit within 14 inches, and until the start of my next hero phase, they count as one turn higher in the chart.
Nice.
Of buffs. And so it lets me moves like in turn 2 get reroll hits of 1, in turn 3 get reroll hits and wounds of 1. And so it just moves that needle just a little bit. A strong second, by the way, for that prayer that I would seriously consider is, instead of Sacrament of Blood, Crimson Rejuvenation, which just lets you heal the cauldron. It lets you heal any Daughters of Khaine unit for D3 wounds. But I would probably often have it on the cauldron just to keep that radius, the +1 save radius, larger. The reason why I went with Sacrament of Blood more is because this isn't a pure offense list. I'm not aiming at defense. So like healing and all that, no, this is all damage. This is a pure damage list.
You said it was die 3 or
D3? D3 wounds is what it heals.
How does that apply towards the witch elves or whatnot?
It doesn't. So it's choose a unit, heal a D3, an injured model.
Right. So it's going to be the multiple models.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and you're going to use it on the cauldron or on one of the heroes. Right. Which again, in this list, I wouldn't use it, which is why I chose the Sacrament of Blood to do more damage output. The heart of this army is 120 screaming, nearly naked women. It's the 60 Sisters of Slaughter, both with dagger and whip, and then 2 units of 30 witch elves. Those 60 are 30 and 30 for the sisters, and another set of 30 and 30 of witch elves. One set with double daggers, one set with a dagger and shield. The reason why I go dagger and shield with one of my witch elves, and I'm probably going to do it in every list I build, is that sometimes you just need a unit to be a little bit harder on whatever they're lining up against. These girls have a base 5-up. I will often have my shield. I think I would often have my shield witch elves providing an escort for my my Cauldron of Blood. And so they would be default 4-up save if they're huddled around the cauldron.
So
because they have a base 6-up, giving them the shield bumps them to a 5-up in the combat phase. The blood shield on the cauldron bumps them to a passive 4-up. If I cast a mystic shield from my Medusa, they would go to a 3-up.
Is 30 the max?
30 is the match of the girls.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. All of the Sisters of Slaughter have 3 attacks per model. The witch elves with dual daggers have 4 attacks, and then the witch elves with the dagger shield are going to have 3 attacks. That's obviously contingent on having a hero nearby. There are 4 heroes. Oftentimes, they're going to be humping that cauldron, or have a Hag Queen escorting one of the other blocks of 30 witch elves, or Sisters of Slaughter. The big advantage of the Sisters of Slaughter is that they can pile in 6 inches for free without needing to be in combat. And so it sets up some really interesting things. Like, even though this list is 4 drops, I'm not concerned about alpha strikes, because what's going to happen is that I'm going to send one of those blocks of 30 as a sacrificial front. And then I'm going to have a 60 Sisters of Slaughter way out of reach behind, and they're all going to pile in. And those whips give them 2-inch reach. And so they're going to pull into combat, potentially another 120 attacks if I get charged on my front unit turn 1. And then when I get to react, I'll retreat out of combat and reshuffle everybody where they need to be. It's a really brutal list. And then 2 units of 5 Heart Renders. Heart Renders are a set of harpies that can set up off table when they drop, or whenever this unit gets set up. They have these javelins that are normally 3-up, neg 1 rend 1 damage. When you set them up, they go to neg 2 rend. And so 10 of these girls, if they pop on a target, are going to do on average about 4.5, 5 wounds.
Is any proximity limitations?
Yeah, 9 inches to set up, and the javelins are 12. Nice. So you'll get 10 of them within range of your target. If your target's within 9 inches. So those are going to be assassinating heroes. And then obviously, since they're in the battalion, they can already run and shoot. And so they can charge, run and shoot, and retreat. and shoot. And after they shoot, they also roll a dice, and on a 4-up, they move an additional 6 inches.
Oh, so you can get them way out of dodge.
Yeah, so like they could drop at 12 inches, throw all their javelins, or 9 inches, and then retreat out to 15 inches.
Jeez.
And so you can chase them, but as soon as you chase them, they're going to retreat out of combat again. As soon as it's their next player's turn, and they're going to reshoot at you again. Because they have like a 14-inch move, so they're going to retreat, out to their maximum range, throw, and then potentially retreat another 6 inches. Nice. Yeah, so they're going to just kite people along, chasing the Heartrenders. And then for the support of this army is a Bloodrack Medusa and 2 Hag Queens. The Bloodrack is going to be casting. It's going to be my Mind Razor caster. It's my Mind Razor of choice spellcaster in this whole army. You're going to see the whole Bloodrack Medusa with Mind Razor a lot in my lists. I'm also running a Shadow Stone. If you want to get Mind Razor off reliably, the Shadow Stone is the way to do it. And what the Shadow Stone does is it is a +1 to cast in Lore of Shadow spells. So it moves that it moves your target number from a 7 to a 6, which makes it a lot more reliable. But it also allows you to reroll 1s on all cast dice. So it's a 6, reroll any 1s, which normally those 1s are what really mess up those cast rolls. So this gives you this closes that gap quite a bit, is what I would say. So that's Mind Razor, Shadow Stone on the Bloodrack Medusa. For the 2 Hag Queens, the significance of the Hag Queens, their prayers are great, and actually, like, I've put the better prayers on my Foot Hag Queens to draw heat away from my Cauldron.
Okay. So
that you can decide if you can focus all your firepower on the Cauldron, but the best buffs are actually on the people on foot. And so what allows me to do is to make the enemy hunt my buffs and not put all my eggs in one basket. So the Hag Queens by default, they get their Witch Brew, which is flipping amazing. They can give to a nearby unit Battle Shock immunity and reroll all failed wounds passively every turn. Yep.
No, see, one of the things I was thinking about when I first saw this was not a lot of spell power, but it makes up for with all the prayers and all of the non-spell effects that you can just buff on there that cannot be easily removed unless you remove the character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so those Hag Queens are going to make 2 of those units of 60 just immune to Battle Shock. Everybody else is going to be saving on a 10 because of the having a 10 bravery because of the Cauldron. Broadcasting its own bravery. And so one of the Hag Queens is going to be Catechism of Murder. Catechism of Murder is by far my favorite of the prayers. When they use it, pick a unit within 14 inches at the start of your until the start of your next hero phase. Any natural die roll of 6 on a hit roll. Okay, so you can't modify this. You can't like any natural hit roll of 6 in the combat phase. That attack inflicts 2 hits instead of 1.
So you go through the process of making the saves independently. It just doubles the number of.
It doubles the number of hits. This is significant because if this unit is Mind Razored, right, those Witch Elves are doing 2 damage a hit. So every 6 does 4 damage.
All right.
Okay. And they're re-rolling hits and wounds.
I know. I can tell you no.
Yeah. And then Martyr Sacrifice is the other one. Inevitably, with 120 bodies, I'm going to sacrifice some units of Witch Elves. Like that's like or Sister Slaughter. Like that's going to happen. Like I will just throw bodies at an enemy. And what this lets me do is for every time a daughter dies, the unit that's been buffed by this prayer, whenever the model dies, I roll dice on a 5 or a 6. The enemy takes a mortal wound.
Take them down with you.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, I could throw this. Like, if I throw a block of 30 Witch Elves, for example, into a Star Drake, I know that 30 Witch Elves on average is going to do 10 mortal wounds to the Star Drake.
Nice.
And with that, if I have the dagger, the other perk of that shield for the shield witch elves is on natural save rolls of 6. I kick back a mortal wound. So I could have a chance mathematically in all of those save rolls that get forced on my witch elves.
Is that on both their natural save, or is that also?
Oh, that's on a natural save. That's not modifiable.
It's not on the okay.
So 1/6 of them are going to kick back mortal wounds.
Okay.
So of the 30 witch elves, assuming that all 30, assuming I take 36 damage in a single turn, okay, they will kill out my witch elves. I will kick back 6 mortal wounds, and then I will roll all of my martyr sacrifices and do another 10.
Yeah, when you consider that, yes, you lost an entire unit of witch elves, but that key, let's say it's a big monster, for example, you could you could be eliminating or neutering something very big.
Yep. I have no problem trading a unit of witch elves with shields for a starter rig. And that's what that is. That's 16 mortal wounds kickback. And they didn't attack at all. Let me point that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why martyr sacrifice is in this list. Is I have bodies to burn, go ahead and kill them. I'm okay with that. They will do more damage on the way out. Against some units, and that's their point. And that's the point here, is that sometimes it's going to be the right choice is to just kick back mortal wounds on the enemy. And then and I add an alternate build here. You can drop a unit of witches and sisters to 20. So instead of 4 units of 30, you do 2 units of 30, 2 units of 20, and potentially increase both units of heart renders to 10. Yeah. You want to do this if you want more ranged firepower / assassination power and less bodies. That's what you would do. Some people will want that, and so that's why I've added these alternate builds. Is that I think that that could potentially be viable, because you're going to, on average, do 9 wounds at -2 rend. On the math, you're going to do 9 wounds at -2 rend when those 20 harpies drop.
And I'm seeing more and more organized events that have like a sideboard where you can swap things out depending on what you're facing or maybe the board that you're on.
Yep.
So it's nice to add that little extra piece there if for modifications. It's not a very big one either.
No, and that's what a lot of events that I play actually have sideboards, and so this is something that I'm always thinking about when I'm building is, oftentimes when I build a list, I'll go through 5, 10 permutations of that list. And this is just one of those permutations.
All right, let's go to the next one here.
Yep.
So we have, this is the Kelebron.
This is the Kelebron. This is going to be the weird list. Okay. This is going to be the one where people did not see this coming. So Kelebron, if you'll remember, Kelebron is the -1 to hit it from shooting attacks, and this is the teleport. This is a 3-drop list. It is running a Slaughter Queen, so it's running a Slaughter Queen, which is a hero on foot as its general. Let me be very clear about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Who's running that Martyr Sacrifice, which is the mortal wound kickback ability. And running Iron Circlet, which is going to give her reroll 1s on her prayers if she rolls a 1. So it makes that Martyr Sacrifice a little bit more reliable. None of that really matters. All that's there, none of it really matters, because she's there literally to hide in the back and to not do anything. And she has the teleport ability where she can choose a unit and teleport it. But this whole army, the whole purpose of it, let me dial in. The whole purpose of this is an Alpha Strike. This is an Alpha Strike Daughters of Khaine list.
Mm-hmm.
So the battalion, the Shadowhammer Compact, is a joint Daughters of Khaine Stormcast Eternal list. And you can see that with the Liberators that are here, the Prosecutors and Judicators. This is, and so what it does is, in the hero phase, you choose 1 Stormcast Eternal and unit and 1 Daughters of Khaine unit that are near one another. And then both of those units can do 1 shared action. So both of those units can move, or both of those units can make a pile and a melee attack if they're both in combat, or both of those units can make a ranged attack if there's legitimate enemies within range. And so the key here is that, like, the irony is that everybody looks at the damage like, oh, double piling. No, actually that move is super, super good because it's an unrestricted move. And what I mean by that is it's movement as if the movement phase, so you can run in it, which is really good for Witch Elves because they can run and charge. And if they're double running and double, they're going to move a lot farther in turn one. And so you're going to get... so what's going to happen is this. You're going to drop everything. Okay, let me go through the list and I'll talk the tactics. So you have a bunch of stuff. You see another 2 blocks of Witch Elves. You see a unit of 10 Liberators here. Yep. The alternate build here, by the way, is to drop those Liberators down and to bump these Witch Elves to the 30 if you want 2 blocks of 30. The reason why I only did 10 why I wanted 10 Liberators is that I want to move those Liberators up to give the Witch Elf blocks double pile-in. Like, so in wave 2, not wave 1, but in wave 2, the Liberators would come in and assist giving one of the, you want the Liberator block to be durable enough to pile in an attack as well.
Right.
You want them easily removed. Because that's what enemies are going to do, is they're going to choose units and just delete units. One or the other, and then it kills the double action.
How are the Witch Elves equipped? Are they double dagger or are they dagger?
Here, I was going to go all dagger. Like all double daggers. There's no defense here. This is all just pure run and gun. This is an alpha strike. So your alpha strike will determine what the result of what happens here is. The Hag Queen, I'll come back to Morathi. The Hag Queen here is Sacrament of Blood. Sacrament is the one that like bumps up the stage. If you'll remember.
Yep. What round it is?
Yeah, what round it is. So in turn 1, it lets them reroll 1s to run and charge, which is obviously good because you're going to be doing both ideally in turn 1. And then Catechism of Murder. So I took the Blood Sigil as an item on this Hag Queen that gives her two specialized prayers instead of 1. I took Catechism of Murder as well. Catechism of Murder is the double hits.
Right.
Okay. So what Morathi is? So Morathi by default is she's a 6 wound on foot model with a natural -1 to hit at range. In this temple, she goes a -2 to hit at range. She's a 3 spell caster, like a 3 spell per round with +1 to cast that can cast range or cast spells at double range. So she's a really good caster. But if she starts taking damage, or if she can choose at the start of the hero phase to turn into her like Snake Morathi self, and she like doubles her wound, so she goes from 6 to 12. If she's taking damage, that damage doubles as well. So she's taking 2 damage, she goes from 4 to 8. So if you want to often change her early if you're planning on getting her into combat. She's a beast in melee with multiple like 2 damage and 3 damage attacks with multiple rend, and she has like a spit that on a 2-up she kills a model nearby, so she can like snipe models out of units like standard bearers and champions and stuff like that. So Morathi is a beast in melee, but the most scary ability about Morathi is no matter what form she's in, she can only each player's turn she can take a maximum of 3 damage ever. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter how much mortal wounds you've leveled at her, the max she can take is 3 in
you gotta chip away at her. You gotta do those wounds, but you can't.
You gotta do the wounds every turn 3. Yep. And so Morathi is pretty terrifying when she gets into combat, especially if she's choosing those combats, where like people don't have strong reprisal against her, because she's going to be in combat, she's going to kill a bunch of stuff, and she's going to stay in combat for a long time. And the key is that she's going to lock a unit up for 3 turns.
What about, she's not going to die it. What about things that remove the model entirely? Like the
that can remove her. So like Nagash's Hand of Dust, but like Curse of Ages.
The reality splitting axe.
The reality splitting axe. All that can do it. Yep. Right. All that can do it. But again, the key here is that but even like Curse of Ages or like Arkan's like infinite mortal wound stuff only maxes at 3.
Yeah, everything is going to come to a cap. So you want to devote some resources, but don't overdo it because that it's just going to fade, fizzle out.
Yep. Yeah. So this is kind of the fun weird list. So the big Ben Curry made this like a big deal where he's like, oh, well, since both the Morathi, her like choosing to shape change happens at the beginning of the turn, and the teleport for Kelebron happens at the beginning of the turn, you can choose the order as the operating player. And so Ben's idea was to teleport the model on foot out 9 inches.
Then transform.
And then transformer. And all it says is you replace the model, but it does, like, you have
Not where.
Right. You have to cover the base, but the monster has a much bigger base. And so you end up getting like a 6-inch charge instead of a 9-inch.
Do you think that might get FAQ'd? No,
probably not. Probably not. It's because that's not the most egregious, and I'm about to show why.
Okay.
So, like, yes, that is how that works. She still has a 6-inch charge. 6-inch charges can easily be failed. And it's a good tactic. You know, it's an obvious combination. It's an obvious combo. Here's where, like, I see you one and let me raise you another. So instead of teleporting, so the idea here is this. You're going to run a unit of witch elves and probably one of your the unit of 30 witch elves fully buffed up, buffed to the 9s. And Morathi's going to get buffed to the 9s. You're going to, but the witch elf, you're going to run them forward along with like a liberator unit or something. The witches are going to like move 6 and run with rerolls. Okay. And then that's in the hero phase. And then the witch elf unit is going to run again in the standard phase. So you're going to get like 12 plus 2d6 inches of movement. So on average, 19 inches of movement. So they have a 5-inch charge. That 30 block of inch elves at the top of 1. And if they've been buffed by the 1 prayer, they're re-rolling 1s to run and charge on all of those dice. Okay. So that 30 block of witch elves statistically is probably getting in. Like, that's happening. Okay. But who wants to just charge with 1 unit? So Morathi, instead of teleporting her in with the Kelebron ability, you teleport in one of the other heroes, either the Hag Queen or the Slaughter Queen. It doesn't matter. Okay. And then you use Morathi's spell Mirror Dance. Mirror Dance allows you to choose 2 heroes. It has a casting value of 4, so this spell's probably going off. You choose a 4. It has a casting of 4. You pick 2 friendly Daughters of Khaine heroes within 24 inches of the caster. So Morathi's going to pick herself, and she's going to pick whoever just got teleported. As long as neither hero is within 6 inches of any other unit, which you can set up. Morathi says she's not. You've just teleported this Slaughter Queen out to the middle of the battle, like 9 inches from the line, so she's not within 6 of anybody. You swap the 2 models' positions. Okay. The advantage here is that with that Kelebron teleport, whoever gets Kelebron teleported can't move.
Oh.
But Morathi didn't get Kelebron teleported. Morathi mirror danced across the table.
Wow.
So now you have Morathi 9 inches out with a 14-inch move. 14
wow. That's an alpha strike.
So now she moves wherever she the hell wants to move.
She can run also in charge?
But she cannot run in charge.
Oh, okay.
That's different.
Still,
she can move out to that 3-inch charge, which is a lot harder to fail.
And she's got a good range and to pick where she wants to beef. What she wants to go after.
Because she's in your starter zone at the beginning, she could be buffed up by prayers or whatever.
Oh, nice.
Or, so if you change this list slightly, you could have put you could have somebody with mirror, you could have somebody that could cast Mystic Shield, like you could ally in, you could drop that 100 points off of Liberators and bring in like a Darkling Coven Sorceress. And for 80 points, and then, Mystic Shield or whatever. Like, there are other options that you can do here for buffing. You could add another Hag Queen if you wanted to increase again, also increase your drops for more prayers and stuff like that.
And so she is very capable in combat.
Oh yeah, she has like damage 3, damage 2, rend 1, rend 2.
And you're not going to remove her, which is usually what the risk is of taking something very strong offensively and putting it out there without support. she doesn't need the support. She's not
She's
going
there for
anywhere
2
to turn
turns.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. And guess what? If she's going to tie something up, while all of your small MSU units, your 5s and 10s, spread out to all of the points. Your Bloodstalkers, which are the snakes with bows, your prosecutors and judicators, all those are archers. Your Heartrenders, all of those are ranged people. So all of them are moving into position to begin raining fire down. And there's 2 fights going on: a 30 block of Witch Elves and the Morathi at the top of one. If the Witch Elves are going not first, you could have martyr sacrificed them. So they're kicking back mortals when we have witches dying. Otherwise, you're probably going to go with the witches first, and then just save Morathi because she's not going to die quick.
She might get dropped just a bit, like maybe down one rung.
You pick a fight initially where you're going to draw other people into combat, but she's not going to take a lot of damage because she's a base 3 up, and she could get to 2 up with a Mystic Shield again if you added an allied caster.
Nice.
So
this is a fun list.
Yeah, it's a fun kind of weird alpha strike list that a lot of people probably aren't thinking about.
And it's going to give people fits. It's going to
yeah, and you got to remember, like, that Mistress of Illusion, you're going to be teleporting a bunch of those units into strategic positions. And there's still another block of 20 Witch Elves coming in.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so it's a fun, different list. So that's the Kelebron list.
All right, let's see this next one here.
My Hag Nar list. I like this list because this is more my play style. Like, I'm more of like the defensive bunkering kind of like that's just how I play. And so this is running the Cauldron Guard. The Cauldron Guard battalion adds anything in it gets +1 to run and charge. Which is significant because all of those Witch Elves can run and charge. So this is functionally +2 movement to all the Witch Elves in the battalion.
Jeez.
You've seen a lot of this stuff before. Because I'm in Hag Nar, it lets me add an additional Cauldron of Blood to the Cauldron Guard, and it requires a Hag Queen. So I basically did a Hag Queen on Cauldron, and then for my additional Cauldron, I added the Slaughter Queen. The Devoted Disciples command trait is the one that broadcasts the ward save +1. I may have mentioned this. I've mentioned this in passing, but let me just highlight this. Everybody in the army, if you're in Allegiance, gets a 6-up ward save. Just passively. You don't need anybody near you.
Yeah, it kind of bothers me that I need to have like a friggin' character to get it that in the mid list.
Passive 6-up across the board. Okay?
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are, passive 6-up. In this temple, that 6-up goes to a 5-up if you're within 7 inches of the general.
That's nice.
Okay. The Slaughter Queen on Cauldron here, I took the prayer Blessing of Khaine, which moves that 5-up, which lets me choose 1 unit within my army with this prayer, and that unit re-rolls that 5-up ward save. So, like, I can make a unit. Let's say you see I have a Witch Elf with Dagger here. They're a base 6-up, 5-up in combat from the a 5-up in combat from the shield. If they're near either of the cauldrons, they're at a 4-up. If those Doomfire Warlocks, for example, are nearby or Mystic Shield them, they're at a 3-up in combat. So it's not unreasonable for that unit of 90 attack Witch Elves to be 3-up, 5-up, 5-up.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's defensive. That Hag Queen on Cauldron, the second Cauldron, I took the Blood Sigil. So the non-general, I took Blood Sigil, which is the double prayer, with the Sacrament of Blood and Catechism of Murder. We've talked about that. The Sacrament of Blood is the one that is bumping up their the phase that you're in. Again, with this Hag Nar, if you'll remember, starting in turn 3, instead of re-rolling just ones to hit, you re-roll all attack rolls. And are all hit rolls. And so that Sacrament of Blood is really doing some work in Hag Nar armies. Because whoever you choose, they're re-rolling all hits in turn 2. Because that's all you need in order to trigger that. So that's real good. And then Catechism of Murder obviously is the double wounds on 6s. The Life Takers are the harpies that are melee. They drop 9 inches out like the ranged ones. They get +1 to run and charge, so they're at an 8-inch charge in this force. And on a charge, in a turn that they charge, they do 2 wounds instead of 1.
What's the base move? What are the harpy base moves?
14 inches. Wow. Now, but when they drop down, they can't move though. Just
granted, but still,
yeah. You could, and by the way, they have a great horde discount. The Life Takers do, the melee ones, because their horde discount is you get 20 of them for 280 points.
So you say 40?
Say what?
What, 40?
Yeah, you say 40. And so, but those 20 models are doing 40 attacks on charge at 2 damage each. The problem is that they're all on 40 mil bases. And that's the challenge of those units, of harpy units, is that they're all on 40 mils.
And they're 1 wound?
Then they're 1 wound, yeah.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, again, they're 80 points, though. So you got to think of these like the Spite Wraiths or whatever. Not Spite. Right. Yeah, like the Spite Revenant.
I forget what they are. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like the Sylvaneth 80 for 5 wounds. Like, that's what these are. They pop in and they steal objectives and they murder things. So you're not really going to be running these tanky, although I have considered in an army like this running 20 of these as a non-assassinating group, but as an actual like piece I'm moving on the tabletop. Because again, 14-inch move with a charge, all the models doing 2, like they could actually put out some damage, especially against like horde armies. The other interesting thing, by the way, about these harpies, the melee ones, after they attack, they roll that dice, and on a 4-up, they move 6 inches. So if they activate first, they have a 50-50 chance of not being hit back.
Because they could get out of dodge.
They could get out of dodge, right.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can kind of hit and run, which is a real, like, it's real tempting to run a large block of those, buff them up, and see what happens. I still need a third unit on the ground, and so I went with 30 block witch elves here. And you'll see I added a for support, in addition to that other block of witch elves, I added a Blood Rack Medusa with Mind Razor and Shadowstone, as we've come to expect, and also a unit of 5 Doomfire Warlocks. I added the Doomfires. I've really had a hard time getting them in lists. I really like them as a unit. They're really hard to get in lists.
Is it the cost?
The cost is actually, they're a great deal. For 160 points, you're getting a 10 wound wizard. Let's start there.
Yeah.
That is a base 5-up, in 5-up, 6-up. In this army, if you're near a cauldron, they're 4-up. If near the general, they're 4-up, 5-up. 10 wound wizard, which is actually a really good deal for 160 points. But they also happen to have, they've been changed. Doomfires have been changed. They have a 10-inch crossbow fire now. So those 5 models have 10 ranged attacks at 4s and 4s at 10 inches. And then if they get into melee, each model has 2 scimitar attacks, and each horse has 2 melee attacks. So a block of 5 of those have 30 attacks.
Wow.
So, like, those Doomfires aren't bad in a pinch for 160 points. And they have a 14-inch move, too, so they have a real high movement. And they have Doomfire, the spell, which if they have at least 5 models in their unit, they do a d6 mortal wounds on their cast.
I remember when they
Yep.
AOS first came out, the Doomfires took a real big hit. But I've always felt that they were still worthy to put on the table. But I haven't seen any. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Well, because they were 200 points previously, so they dropped.
Oh, so they dropped. Okay.
Yeah, they gave them a crossbow attack. They gave them rend on their scimitar, and they dropped them 40 points.
Oh, well, that's a nice trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great trade-off. And so, but the problem is there's not a lot of battalions that use them. In fact, there's one, and you can't sneak them in any of the like temple stuff. So there's one battalion, and it's really specialized, and it's real hard. Like, it's costly to get them in that battalion. And so they just, anytime you add Doomfires, they add 1 drop to you. I like them as a second wizard in this list because this is so defensively based. They're my dedicated Mystic Shield that can actually throw some damaging magic as well and offer range support.
Right.
So the alternative to dropping those Doomfires, if you want to go back to 3 drops, would be to trade those 5 Doomfires for 10 Heart Renders. Or I guess that's not going to reduce your drop, sorry. But that'll give you a unit of 10 that will drop out of the sky and assassinate with javelins. But you lose the crossbows and the spells. Or you can take those 10. If you didn't want to do either of those, you could run bump both of those units of 5 life takers. You could bump both of those to 10 as well. That would be another alternate build. So anyways, yeah, I mean, what I would say, and like what this does is this pushes up on points. You know, you have 2 centers of power, both cauldrons, and they push up. Everybody's like running and charging at +1 to runs and charges, so it's going to move across the battlefield very quickly. And yeah, it's doing its thing.
Those are great.
Mindracer is not as effective in this army as the other one because those witches are on bravery 7s rather than on bravery bravery 7s rather on bravery 10s. That said, I would still probably hit that cauldron. Like I would save that Mindracer for the Slaughter Queen on Cauldron whenever I could. Because that Slaughter Queen on Cauldron is going to be at a 10, and the attacks on the altar, like the Avatar of Khaine, if it gets buffed, it's going to have 4 attacks on 3s and 3s, neg 3 rend 4 damage with Mindracer.
Nice.
Yeah, so like the Star Drake with the Mirror Shield, okay, you know, or whatever, like. He's going to go in with neg 3 rend and just cut that dragon down. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about real quickly, like what do you see as weaknesses for some of these? What do you see as some of the detriments? Because there's some offensive, crazy firepower. There's some nice defensive possibilities with layered defenses. Certainly, it's a very mobile list. It's got a little bit of range. It seems a little weak in terms. It's not going to dominate the magic phase. It's got utility magic but it's supplemented by prayers. Where is the downside of this list?
It is
these lists rather
of these lists. Yeah. So the Gaunt Summoner on Balewind is going to be a problem in this army. Like for this army in general to deal with a Gaunt Summoner on Balewind, it's a real issue. Even if you have your Heart Renders, because it's easy to be able to keep that Gaunt Summoner out of range. And that Gaunt Summoner is going to cut each of those Witch Elf block units in half on every cast.
What other hard counters or big things that you wouldn't want to see this army?
KO are going to be painful in turn 1. Because whoever the chemist levels against, his battle shock gun is going to delete a unit if you don't go first. Which against KO you're not going to go first in any of these lists.
What about Tzeentch or?
I think so. The amazing thing about these lists and the Witch Elves in general is that they're just going to chop through a lot of stuff that they touch. I would say that some of the higher armor armies are going to be a little bit of a problem, but you have a number of sources of mortal wounds here that allow you to have answers to some of those things.
I see this chopping through a large horde undead army very easily because there's just not enough defense, and those bodies you're just not going to have it. You're not going to get to the point where they can recover.
No,
but you, yeah. The units are just going to go by.
Yeah, they're going to evaporate units,
yeah.
And it's going to against them. It's going to be ugly. If generals can be assassinated out on the cauldrons, that's going to be a problem. Like that'll be a big dampener for the daughters.
How about Nurgle? Nurgle tends to stymie some of these.
I think so. I think they're going to do some work against Nurgle.
Really? Okay.
I do. Because they base are hitting on 3s. Neg 1 to hit, like Plague Touched. I'm only on 4s with 120 attacks. Guess what? They're still coming in. And they're reroll 1s or reroll all hits. Like okay, like they're gonna come in and just like they're like, I can just imagine what like a block of 30 witches do to like a unit of 30 plague bearers.
What
Like
about
yeah?
What about Seraphon, who have they have a lot of units that decent armor, but they can ignore some rends.
Yeah, I think that Seraphon, because Seraphon can pick their fights, but these lists at least have lots of bodies, so their teleport is going to get neutered because you can spread your witches out. So you're going to keep all their teleports on their half of the board. You're going to be able to zone out your entire backfield. Right. So they're not going to make it into your backfield. And if you touch any of the Seraphon units, they're going to blow them up. Even things like the tanky Bastiladons. The key to Bastiladons is not rend; it's throwing dice.
It's it's volume.
And those witches are just going to throw dice at the models.
What about Croak-NATO?
Croak-NATO is going to be a problem. Yeah, I mean, there's just there's not a lot of solutions to Croak in this army.
But the Cunnin Ruck, he's dishing out lots of ranged attacks, but they're not going to get the first turn against these guys, you don't think?
Yeah, and these guys are going to run across the table, and they're going to cut a bunch of orcs down.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to all have 6-up wards, and yeah, it's going to be ugly. Like,
but against Stormcast, they have the heavy armor.
They do. They don't have the bodies though, and the problem is there's a lot of like small sources of mortal wounds strewn throughout these lists. And so those kickback mortal wounds and stuff like that are going to have to do some work.
So where do you see them in the meta? Just based on what you know right now.
A high tier 2. High tier 2.
A high tier 2.
Yeah. A high tier, because the problem is that there are some matchups, like as I've built Sisters, there are some matchups that are just going to be bad. A Croak-NATO is just a bad matchup for you.
Bad match for a lot of things, but it's not
for a lot
perfect.
Of things, right?
Yeah.
Again, you can build to deal with that, but then you're really cutting into your general killiness. So they're just bad matchups, and the question is do you have 5 good games? Do you have 5 good games, and how do you play against the current meta? This list will do well against the new armies. Nurgle and Death. This list is going to cut through. Like these lists are going to cut through them.
Yeah.
Against other armies, it's going to be like Fire Slayers. Man, this list will do wonders against Fire Slayer armies, because they're going to do a lot of damage, and they have the bodies to match, and you're going to get more attacks per square unit, because what's going to happen is you're all on 20-25 mil bases. So those witches are going to you're going to push them in and get like 2 ranks deep on the daggers or 3 on the whips. Those guys are
32s.
Volkites are on 32s with 2 attacks.
How are the dwarves on 32s?
The Fire Slayers are on 30s. All the other dwarves are on 25s.
I know,
but Fire Slayers are on 30s.
The Fire Slayers still. They're like naked dwarves.
I know. Their arms are white.
They have big bulky armor.
Yes, they have big muscles. They're on 32. So yeah. I think they're high tier 2. I think that with some solid play and good matchups, I think you can win tournaments with them. And I think they'll even fare well against a lot of the even Tzeentch. Like, man, you get some witches into like some horrors, and you're just going to delete. Like, I don't care if you brought 200 horrors; they're going to cut through 200 horrors in 2 to 3 turns. And they're going to get into those casters. And they have 120 wounds. I don't know, like, yes, that Gaunt Summoner is going to do some work. I don't know how much actual work it's going to do against everything else. Yeah.
Nice.
So I mean, like, again, I don't think that they're tier 1. I don't think they're gonna destroy the meta. But I do think that in the hands of a capable player, they are going to surprise people. They're going to be super fast, and people are not going to expect how fast they're going to move across the table.
Blades of Khorne. That was the other one that I was going to ask.
Blades of Khorne. I think against a standard Bloodletter bomb, I think the murder host is murdered. Because what's going to happen is this: murder host is going to like get to choose to go first, and the witch elves are just going to like the murder host can't help but run forward, right? Because they like start and they move 2d6.
One trick pony. Yep.
Yeah, and so what they're going to do is the witch elves are going to set back far enough that the murder host is going to have a really tough turn 1 charge, right? And in the world of like like my 120 body slaughter troop, what's going to do is I'm going to stretch a line out and let them charge that line all the way down the line, and then I'm going to pile in and delete everything that charged me. Because I'm going to space them out. I'm going to let them kill my unit of 30, and then I'm going to pile in with everything else and delete just across the board. And like you will like with because they'll kill 30, and then you're going to take 90 and wipe off anything on the front line, and then go because you're piling in and killing in their turn.
Very nice. So is this what you're taking to Adepticon, or is it?
Oh no!
You're not gonna have us ready for that.
I can't. Adepticon's in 5 days.
I know. That's what I was wondering.
No, I mean I just built 60 witches, but I'm not taking this. I'm gonna take my one. I don't know what I'm taking for the championship. And what I mean by that is much like on Friday night I was still deciding. You remember that, Mitch?
Yes, I do. I do.
And I don't think I'm going to take my KO Zilfin Clown car. It's top of the meta right now. And so on one hand, if I win with it, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. But I want to take dwarves. Like I've painted my guts out.
Like almost like the last year doing this.
Yeah, I have. And this is the big thing. So I'm going to take my super sexy board and all my awesome painted models, and
you'll be fine.
And the reality, what I'm going to do is I want to compete in all the spaces. So I'm going to take a list that is appropriate. Like it's going to be competitive. It's not a tier 1 list or anything like that. But if I get some good matchups, if I play well, I'll have a chance at top tables.
Very nice.
And so ideally, I'd like to finish in the top 10 or even the top 20. Simply because if you'll remember, we had 120 signups last year, 104 played. They have 190 signups this year.
Wow.
So
now, wait, are those guaranteed games, or are those some of those waiting lists?
No, those are guaranteed games.
Wow, so they grew
188, 192, something like that.
Anybody who has any issues with AOS can go fuck themselves. I mean, that's a big jump.
A-Con is going to be the largest AOS tournament in the world this year.
That's great. God, next year I can't even imagine what it's going to be like.
So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so if I can get the top 20, I'd be really happy with my performance. Especially because I'm not taking a top tier list. Honestly, I'm taking a mixed order list, right? Because that's what I'm taking. I'm taking a bunch of dwarves. And so I'll have Dispossessed on the table. I'll have Fire Slayers. I'll have KO. And I think I'm going to surprise some people. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's like with me last year. I took a very subpar list and managed to get into the top 10.
Yep.
It's a moral victory. You don't have to necessarily win to come away with an accomplishment. And look, I'm sure you're going to do fine. I'll be watching. I'll be waiting. I'm going to hope that you're going to be on the stream at some point.
Well, I'm doing the whole gamut this year at A-Con. And what I mean by that is, last year I just did the championship. I'm doing 2,000-point Vanguard tournaments on Thursday. I'm doing the teams on Friday with Kenny Lowell. He's bringing his Fire Slayers.
Nice. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Good luck to Kenny.
He's bringing his Fire Slayers. I'm bringing
him for me.
My guys, I will. And Kenny will actually he'll be at 200 games of pure Fire Slayers with the last game at A-Con.
Very nice.
Yeah,
nice.
So I get to play 3 of those games with him alongside of him on in the teams tournament on Friday. And we're hoping that we'll end up on screen for that. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, it'll be fun. So I'm gonna and the reason why I'm doing this is I'm gonna take all of my nicely painted stuff because I want to compete in all the spaces, which means that I was thinking about taking some Nurgle and stuff like that, but my KO Fire Slayer stuff is much better painted. And so I want to try a shot at best painted, with my board and everything. I think I have a shot at it.
It's a sick army. Okay, well, let's talk more about this once you get back from it, and we can talk about how the tournament went. I'm sure you're going to be talking about it on Warhammer Weekly, which everybody should check out.
Well, not this week. This week we'll be focusing on. Vince and I will be at the preview night.
Are you doing live? Yeah. What's your schedule? Actually, let's go over that.
Yeah. So Vince and I are doing preview night Wednesday night. With GW. So the Pete and Andy show. They're going to probably preview the Edeneth Deepkin, we think.
And what's the most popular and likely theory now? Because the latest theory that I'm buying into is that this is a dark elf thing.
Yeah, well, so we know from the Daughters of Khaine book that the Edeneth were created by Teclis, but he discarded them.
Okay.
And so he kind of threw them away. And it appears that Malarian stepped in and helped them realize their potential. And so it's a combination of high elf and dark elf. So you're going to see probably some of both of the imagery there. The rumor is that they are going to be a high cost, low model count army with lots of big monsters and crazy heroes. They are because they're like summoning like everything from the deep of the like darkness of the abyss of the ocean. And so there's like Mathalon or whatever, the old elf, high elf god of the seas. There's been rumor that he's tied to these guys somehow. He was like remember the Merwim or the Forge World like mer creature.
Yes, I do.
Like yeah, like that. Like that guy was tied with like the Mathalon and all that stuff with the high elves. And so it seems like all of that, like it may be a building out of that.
So we maybe get a little bit of high elf.
Well, again, but they're not high elves.
I don't know, but I'm saying, well, a lot of this is these are not really dark elves, the Daughter of Khaine anymore.
Yeah,
There's a lot of things that are not necessarily dark elves. I mean, the snake ladies are not dark elves. They're twisted. They're Slaanesh twisted in some respects, and they're part of Order.
because again they're part of Order because they are civilization builders, and that's the point. Like Order, the people who are Order build civilizations. Now they can be really crappy civilizations that like murder people and stuff like that, but they're still civilizations.
Yeah, we can look past that. I
don't think we can look past it. Like
the fact that they want to murder.
Understand that Order does not equate to good.
I'm not.
A lot of people have collapsed that. Does that make sense?
I know. This is a long-standing discussion that goes from D&D days.
Yes.
Law and chaos is not good and evil.
You can have evil factions in Order, and that's what we have. What I would say is that apparently these Edeneth may also be the ones that are stealing the souls. Nagash had noticed that somebody else was stealing souls. Apparently the Edeneth don't feel anymore. I don't know if it's like the cold depths of the abyss, where they've like lost the ability to like feel like emotions or anything. And so they're stealing souls and then consuming them so that they can possibly feel again for short periods of time. Like, so it's a super dark army.
It's great.
It'll be really interesting to see.
I can't wait.
Again, these are rumors. We don't know if any of this is confirmed.
But we only have a few days left until we get your live. Okay,
so we'll at least get a glimpse of all the models and stuff.
Show us the opening sneak previews from that. What else? What else are you looking to broadcast throughout the weekend? I know you're going to do the drive home.
We'll do a drive home. But we'll do a drive home Sunday night. So after the tournament, when Vince and I are driving from between Dayton or from Chicago and Indianapolis, that 3 or so hour drive, oftentimes we'll do a broadcast on the way home as well.
Very good.
And we'll talk about for me, I'll talk about my wins and losses in the tournament over the 4 days, 5 days, 4 days. And he'll probably talk about Crystal Brush because he's competing in the Crystal Brush. So all of you go vote for Vince. And watch his channel, watch his Twitter. There's actually like a portion of Crystal Brush is voting. Like a portion of the final judging is actually like player votes, like people voting. So please go do that. That will make a difference. Oftentimes, a lot of the pieces that win, some of them are because of technical skill, but more often they're because either the painters have a very high follower number, like they're very popular painters, or they're very popular topics like Space Marines or things like that. And so like people look at that and go, that's awesome, give it a 10, as opposed to like Malifaux where they're like, whatever, Malifaux 4. Like, I don't like the models or whatever. And, you know, and so those things, or they just don't get votes. That's the other thing, is that like people just skip over those and don't vote for those.
I wish it wasn't like that. I mean,
and that's like 50-50 of the voting, the final voting.
Bad,
or like,
but it is the reality. That's where it is. So
and it's what turns those final votes. So like
check out the models, go and vote.
Yes.
Vote for what you
for
think
the Crystal Brush Acon.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Vote something. Just participate. Whatever
absolutely.
you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's great. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Best of luck to Vince. And can't wait to see what interesting stuff is going to be in that, because that was a big highlight for me last year. Not just because it was just amazing to see the quality jobs that, you know, the work that people put in, but because I also got to see that incredible throne Nagash.
Yeah,
that was just went viral.
It won the Slayer Sword when it went to the UK,
and it did. And I took a picture of that and just threw it out there, and I was amazed at how fast people responded to it and how crazy.
It was a beautiful piece.
Oh, the pictures didn't do it justice.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. And Vince has some competitive pieces this year. So I don't know if we'll finally walk away with one of those crystal brushes that he's been longing for, but let's hope.
Let's cross fingers and vote. Whoever you vote for, just vote. Yep. If you're a fan if you're part of this community, just contribute in some way and just give people their due in terms of, you know, just in terms of a response based on their hard work, because there's a lot of talented people, but there's also you would want the same thing if you work very hard on your armies or your a major figure.
And most of these trainers, by the way, have put in between 150 and 300 hours for each submission.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's some incredible talent. So just in terms of where we go from here, I know it's going to be a little bit before we can get back on the air with you and talk about another unlocking. And there could, for all we know, there could be another battle tome on the horizon. But I would like to do a follow up and try to get you to talk. I think some of the most interesting unlockings I do are with you. And you know, I don't know how deep you went with Nurgle, but I'd like to go and maybe unlock that book. Maybe even your take on the Legions of Nagash, because I know you have an undead army. So
I do, and actually, the irony of you saying that is that I actually for my hobby army for next year, I was not going to do Daughters because I didn't want to go head to head with Vince at Holy Wars next year. Both do painting Daughters for the painting hobby award stuff. But I was really wrestling with what I wanted to do as my big project for next year. I think I'm probably going to do Daughters now, actually. So I'll deal with Vince. But no,
he'll get over it.
I think I'm going to do Daughters because I got my concept. Everything locked in. I know what I want my board to look like. I know. So at that point, like, it's just a matter of executing it because I got the vision of what I wanted. But originally, the high contender was going to be a fully TK converted Legions of Nagash. Like that was the plan. Nice. Was to do the whole Egyptian TK themed Legions of Nagash.
Oh, that's almost sacrilege. Taking TK and giving it to Nagash, man. I know.
So anyway, so that was original. So like I do have a love, and I've done
his model has a little bit of that. Has a little like Khemri look to it.
It does, and so does Arkans, and so does
Arkan, right?
Yeah, and so like they all fit just almost out of the box. They all fit in a TK army, and so and I have like 15,000 points of Tomb Kings, like mostly in bits here in the house. So like doing a full converted thing, like would be very easily. What?
Gotta do something with them because
I'm not running them as TK anymore. Yep. Yeah. That's great. So I know what I was going to do for my Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. Like I knew all my conversions for my TK. I knew what my board was. Talked to Grisimo and talked about possibly him doing some custom sculpts for me and his like death stuff. And but I think I'm going to end up doing Daughters.
Okay. So. Well, you know, you never know unless something catches your fancy for the following year. That could be it. But let's talk about after you get back from Adepticon about maybe doing another unlocking with something else. Sure. One of the more recent books, either Nurgle or Legions, and best of luck to you and Vince and everybody who's going to Adepticon. I won't be there this year, unfortunately. I have a scheduling conflict with some stuff going on with my son, but I will be there in spirit, and I'll certainly be watching as much of the feeds and any of the broadcasts that I can. And I will be there.
Oh, and by the way, I'll just mention it to the viewers. I'm also doing. It looks like I'm probably going to do NashCon as well this year. I didn't think I was going to be able to, but for those of you that NashCon is June like 2nd and 3rd in Nashville. And I went last year with Vince, and we really enjoyed it. Vince had committed early because I think that for the first place award, he's actually doing a custom painted mini. Like the award for first place at NashCon, Vince is going to do a commission for whoever wins that.
Great.
But I wasn't going to go, and it looks like my schedule may open up. And if that is the case, then I'll be at NashCon as well.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Well, we managed to keep this, under 2 hours?
Yeah, that's pretty good for us.
It's pretty good for us. Thanks again, Tom. Again, keep an eye out for Tom and content coming up for Tom throughout, the pre and post Adepticon timetable, which is this upcoming week. And we'll have Tom on it back again sometime soon. Appreciate it. And don't forget, except for this Wednesday, every Wednesday, he and Vince are on Warhammer Weekly. All right? Have a great day, everybody. Anything else before we call quits? Anything else you want to say?
I think that's it. That's it for now.
Great. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.